Death doesn't have to be the end, at least not for some of God's creatures, because the animal kingdom is full of peculiarities. And yes, that includes animals that can live beyond their apparent death. These are 20 animals that can live after death. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel and leave a like. Now let's get started. Number 20. Snakes. Decapitate the snake and only the body dies. This is a phrase often used to describe the fall of evil organizations or groups, based on the symbolic belief that without the head, the rest will scatter like rats, or in this case, that the body cannot live without the head. But by now, we all know that's not exactly true. In fact, snakes are among the most well-known creatures for continuing to show signs of life even after suffering fatal injuries, including decapitation. There are several videos showing snakes having their heads cut off, yet their bodies continue to writhe for a considerable time before slowly dying. In other cases, someone cuts off a snake's head and, after provoking it in some way, the severed head actually bites the person. How is this possible? Well, a snake's body is structurally different from that of many other animals, especially warm-blooded ones. They don't require as much oxygen to stay alive. And even after the head is removed, the cells in the head don't die immediately. They still have plenty of life left in them. So if you touch a snake's head shortly after it's been cut off, it's still very much alive. And alive enough to bite you and make you regret not just leaving it alone. There have even been survival shows on channels like Discovery Channel where this has happened to trained experts. So if it can happen to them, it can definitely happen to you. Number 19. Cockroaches. The next one is a more common story, one that many of you have probably encountered, especially on a hot night or when turning on the kitchen light in the early hours of the morning. Cockroaches are the enemies of any homeowner because, unlike ants, spiders, or even rats and mice, cockroaches are incredibly hard to kill. You can step on them with all your might, and surprisingly, they'll still be alive. You can hit them with a rolled-up newspaper, crush them with a sandal, or even try to drown them in running water, and yet they simply get back up as if nothing happened. You could even joke that if we dropped a nuclear bomb on them, they'd survive the radiation as if it were just any other day. So, why exactly are these creatures so hard to eliminate? Well, the answer lies in biology, more specifically in the tough anatomy they've developed over millions of years of evolution. Cockroaches have extremely strong, resilient, and incredibly flexible exoskeletons, which makes them almost impossible to crush completely. In fact, they are known for being able to flatten their bodies and squeeze into tiny cracks, spaces where other insects wouldn't even try to enter, which means their bodies are already accustomed to withstanding external pressures without suffering fatal damage. To provide more context, cockroaches can withstand up to 900 times their own body weight, which is an impressive feat in the world of invertebrates. And what happens if you cut off their head? Well, I've already shown an animal that can survive that, so why not two freaks of nature? Cockroaches can survive decapitation because they don't breathe through their mouth or head. They breathe through small openings called spiracles, located along their body. As a result, even without their head, they continue carrying out their basic bodily functions for a while, until they eventually die, not from the injury itself, but from dehydration, as they can no longer drink water without their head. Oh, and about the nuclear bomb part, I'm not exaggerating. While a direct explosion would certainly vaporize them, they would be able to withstand the residual radiation for a considerably longer period than humans. This is due to the simplicity of their bodies in terms of tissues and cell division. While humans would quickly be affected by genetic changes caused by radiation, cockroaches could continue living and even reproducing for some time. An absurdly high dose of radiation, well above the human threshold, would be required to completely eliminate a cockroach. These creatures are almost evil in their resilience, practically indestructible. So if you come across one and decide to face it, make sure it's really dead, or be prepared to see it crawl back later as if nothing ever happened. Number 18. The octopus. I'm going to be very specific here because I don't want you to misunderstand what's happening. When an octopus dies, it is truly dead, and there's no way around that, no matter how impressive its body is. Sometimes, however, it can simulate death to attract predators or prey, but it's important to emphasize that even in this situation, the octopus is still clearly alive. This is something that needs to be understood clearly, as confusion at this point can be dangerous. The exception to this rule, however, isn't the octopus's body, but rather its tentacles. As you probably already know, if an octopus loses one of its tentacles, it can regenerate it without much difficulty. But what you might not know, and it's a fascinating detail, is that the tentacle will continue to move even after being completely detached from the main body. This may seem a bit creepy, but there's a scientific explanation behind it. The secret lies in the extremely complex nervous system that each tentacle possesses. What happens is that these tentacles can continue to react to stimuli, such as touch or movement, even after being separated from the octopus's main brain. In fact, the tentacles remain responsive for quite some time, even after the octopus is euthanized and its arms are severed. This is truly intriguing because it means that, in certain cases, these arms can even perform reflex movements as though they are still under the control of an active nervous system. This is why, in some situations, you might see octopus tentacles wriggling after they've been cooked, fried, or even exposed to intense heat. Even after all the preparation, the arms are still capable of moving, as if the energy in their muscles is still operating independently from their body. This phenomenon is both impressive and somewhat unsettling, which is why you need to be very careful when eating octopus tentacles, especially if you're foolish enough to eat a live octopus, as some do in certain cultures. Yes, this really happens, though it's a highly dangerous practice. The reason why this is so dangerous is that, in some cases, these tentacles can actually latch onto your windpipe, which could lead to suffocation, causing you to stop breathing. While the tentacles don't need oxygen to move, you absolutely need air to stay alive. Additionally, the way these tentacles function is so advanced that, in some octopus species, they actually cut off one of their own tentacles and use it as a weapon to defend themselves from predators or to attack prey. Using their limbs so intelligently and strategically shows how the octopus is, in fact, a master of survival. So even the octopus knows that its tentacles are unbeatable when it comes to performing specialized functions. These arms are its secret weapons, designed to handle almost any threat or situation. Number 17. Salamanders. Although salamanders, in general, cannot revive after death, they possess a fascinating and unique ability that has captured the imagination of many people and scientists. They can regenerate their limbs, which in some ways is quite similar to the incredible regenerative ability of octopuses that I mentioned earlier. Salamanders have the gift of regeneration, something truly impressive from a biological standpoint. Their ability to recover body parts is a phenomenon that has fascinated biologists for over a century, and during that time, scientists have uncovered many of its secrets, though there are still many mysteries. The regeneration process in salamanders is something that continues to be intensively studied because it is one of the most surprising abilities in the animal kingdom. They have an incredible capacity to recover from injuries, especially in terms of limb regeneration. When a salamander loses a limb, it doesn't simply wait for a slow healing process or a simple repair. Instead, it seals the amputation site with a special type of skin, creating a base for the regeneration process. This mechanism, which evolved over millions of years, allows the animal to rebuild a new body part, as functional as the original one. This limb regeneration is almost like a biological second chance, a new opportunity for the salamander to continue living fully despite the loss. It's such a perfect process that some scientists claim it's almost as if salamanders reborn from the point of regeneration, which is a poetic and fascinating view of how nature can efficiently heal its own damage. Additionally, for specific species, like the axolotl, a type of aquatic salamander, regeneration can begin almost instantly. In just a few hours, they start rebuilding the lost limb, which is an impressive feat considering the accelerated pace of regeneration. Although the process isn't as fast as Wolverine's recovery powers, for example, it is still remarkably effective and quick. Now, a major point of interest in modern science is whether it would be possible to replicate this regenerative ability in humans. This question has been one of the greatest challenges in biomedicine, and many people are trying to understand how salamanders do it. If limb regeneration could be applied to humans, the implications would be immense. Imagine a scenario where someone loses an arm due to an accident. If regeneration were a viable possibility, there would be no need to live with a prosthetic for the rest of their life or suffer from permanent loss. Instead, the person could have the arm regenerated in a relatively short period, completely restoring the functionality of the limb. Of course, this would raise complex questions about the process, such as whether it would be painful or what it would mean to see a body part regenerating so quickly and visibly, but it would undoubtedly represent an extraordinary scientific breakthrough. That's why many scientists are studying creatures like salamanders, observing their biological processes, and trying to understand how these creatures are able to do something that we, humans, are still far from achieving. The goal is to learn from them and perhaps one day apply this knowledge for the benefit of humans, changing the way we approach injury recovery and disabilities. Number 16. Wood frog. Here's another thing humanity would love to learn, because feeling cold is truly one of the most unpleasant sensations we can experience. The uncontrollable shivering, the numbness that seems never to go away, the hopelessness of wanting to warm up while the temperature keeps dropping. The list of discomforts is endless. But for wood frogs, the story is completely different. These frogs have an astonishing ability. They literally recover after freezing completely. This isn't science fiction or something out of this world. It's real. Wood frogs live in regions where temperatures can drop drastically during the winter. When this happens, they don't seek shelter or try to avoid the cold as most animals would. Instead, they have the ability to let the cold hit their bodies in such a way that they freeze completely. However, despite being literally frozen, these frogs do not die. An impressive biological process occurs to protect the frog during freezing. Minutes after the ice begins to form on the wood frog's skin, something incredible happens inside its body. The frog's liver begins to convert stored sugars, which would normally be used as glycogen, into glucose. This glucose not only provides energy, but also plays a crucial role in protecting the frog's cells from damage. The glucose is released from the liver and circulates through the bloodstream, being distributed to all the frog's tissues, where it prevents the cells from completely dehydrating and shrinking, something that would normally kill any other living being. As the wood frog freezes, its heart continues to function for a while, pumping the protective glucose throughout its body. However, the frog's heart begins to slow down and eventually stops completely. All its other organs stop functioning as well. And according to any biological logic, the frog should be dead. But it's not. In reality, it remains alive in a state of suspended animation, awaiting the return of warmth. The only thing that could kill a wood frog during this process would be if the temperature dropped even further, below a point where its body could no longer withstand the extreme cold, or if some external factor injured it severely while it was frozen. However, if the weather warms up and temperatures rise again, something almost magical happens. The frog enters a kind of reboot, restarting its organism. It begins to repair its organs one by one until it is completely restored and functioning normally again. After this process, the frog returns to its everyday activities, hopping around as if nothing ever happened. It literally dies only to come back to life. This is not just insane, it's practically a superpower of nature. This process of temporary death and rebirth is an impressive adaptation that puts wood frogs on a biological level far superior to most other animals. And, as you can imagine, many scientists are trying to understand how this process could be replicated in humans. If we could mimic this superpower, the possibilities would be immense, especially in fields like medicine and organ preservation. For now, wood frogs remain the only known creatures with this incredible ability, while we humans still have to endure the cold in the best way we can. Number 15. Turtles. The next issue is more about making sure the animal is actually dead, rather than just being in motion or about to die. Because when you think about it, a turtle is undoubtedly one of the most resilient animals to ever exist on the planet. Their shells are incredibly hard and powerful, capable of resisting predator attacks. And if you choose the right species of turtle or tortoise, they can live much longer than humans. Some turtles, like the Galapagos giant tortoise, have an impressive lifespan, living over 150 years. They are also incredibly adaptable and can survive in extreme conditions. Another aspect that makes turtles fascinating is their pace of life. They move so slowly that often you don't even notice what they are doing, or sometimes whether they are even moving at all. This, of course, makes determining whether a turtle is really dead a difficult task. Surprisingly, even when a turtle is dead, it can still appear to be moving. This happens due to the way they are biologically built. Turtles have a unique physiological system that allows their limbs to keep moving for a while, even after death. The main reason for this phenomenon is the turtle's low metabolic rate, which means their body doesn't need much energy to keep functioning for a time. Additionally, they have a high concentration of ions in their tissues, which helps their cells continue to function even when brain activity has stopped. This allows the turtle's heart to continue beating without any sign of brain activity, which is quite unusual in the animal kingdom. It's as if the turtle is in a state of almost suspended animation, where the body continues functioning but without the consciousness or control we would normally have. This is somewhat disturbing, but also one of the reasons they are so difficult to kill, both physically and biologically. Turtles are known for their peaceful lives and constant pace, which, however, is also a reflection of their long lifespan. Some can live up to 200 years, making them one of the longest living creatures on the planet. Unfortunately, with the advancement of deforestation and the increasing expansion of urban areas, the chances of a wild turtle living that long are decreasing. This is due to the destruction of their natural habitats and illegal hunting, which continue continue to be constant threats to the survival of many turtle species. Therefore, it's essential to ensure that a turtle is really dead before doing anything with it, especially since some turtles and similar species are known for a peculiar behavior called brumation. During brumation, they appear dead but remain alive, in a deep hibernation state where their bodily functions slow down significantly. To test whether your turtle is really dead, one of the easiest ways is to stimulate it. You can try provoking it, pressing its tail, or applying some other kind of physical stimulus. Even during brumation or hibernation, turtles can quickly awaken when the right stimulus is applied. If you are unsure whether the turtle is alive or dead, another way to check is to wait some time and observe if it starts decomposing. The smell will reveal if the animal has passed that stage, but of course, this is something no one wants to have to do. Number 14. Mike the chicken. Now, before I begin, I want to make it clear about this topic because the stories I'm about to share don't always involve creatures simply escaping death in common ways. Some of them are actually extremely bizarre, and one of them is the story of Mike the chicken. But what makes Mike so special? Well, believe it or not, this chicken had its head cut off and still managed to live for 18 months afterward. No, I'm not kidding. This really happened. Here's a photo of Mike to prove this story, in case you have difficulty believing it. What happened was this. Farmer Lloyd Olson and his wife Clara were doing their routine work of cutting the flock of chickens, meaning they needed to decapitate some of them. The process was simple. Lloyd swung the axe and Clara handled the cleaning. A pretty efficient and straightforward job until one day, after decapitating one of the chickens, Lloyd and Clara noticed something extremely strange. The chicken, even without its head, was still moving. But it wasn't the usual involuntary movement, the typical death spasm. No, the bird was walking around, kicking, running, and doing the most normal things for a chicken. At first, they were both perplexed, so they decided to place the chicken in an old apple crate on the porch overnight. To everyone's surprise, the next morning, when Lloyd went to check what had happened, he found that the chicken was alive again. This didn't make sense, but he didn't give up. The phenomenon continued, and the chicken, which should have died immediately after decapitation, was actually completely alive and well. Even Lloyd's great-grandson commented that Mike was a very peculiar part of the family's history, something no one would ever forget. Although it's still unclear exactly what caused this miraculous survival, the fact is that Mike lived for an impressive 18 months after being decapitated. And it wasn't just passive survival. During this time, Lloyd took advantage of the situation to make money, having Mike displayed in various cities during a tour that stretched from coast to coast. Mike became a sensation, and Lloyd managed to profit a lot from it, which allowed him to even improve the family farm and visit places he'd never imagined without the chicken. This event is so peculiar and extraordinary that to this day, it remains one of the most fascinating stories about resilience and the survival capabilities of nature. Mike the chicken story proves that sometimes the laws of biology can be challenged in ways none of us would expect. What happened to Mike is almost a miracle of nature and a testament to the incredible resilience certain animals can have, even in absolutely adverse situations. Number 13. The Plenarian. We've all heard the famous phrase, "You can't kill me," in movies and TV shows, but deep down, we know it's a big lie. Even if a person is hard to kill, they can still die, and in many cases that difficulty ends up being quite frustrating. However, with the Plenarian, we find a creature that is, honestly, almost impossible to kill completely. This worm, for example, is a clear example of nature's resilience. You might look at this animal and think, well, I'll just cut it in half. You might even do that, but what happens next? In no time, it will regenerate from both ends, and what you'll have is not one worm, but two. This is what scientists call extraordinary regeneration, something that many other creatures in the animal kingdom cannot perform with such effectiveness. This ability has fascinated researchers for a long time, and Plenarians have been a major topic of study in this regard. Scientists believe that the incredible regenerative capacity of Plenarians is directly related to their stem cells. These cells, which are a central topic in much scientific research, are distributed throughout the worm's body and play a crucial role in the regeneration process. The most impressive thing, however, is that these stem cells need to travel long distances to reach the wounded area. Each stem cell is only about 1 micrometer long, but it needs to travel a distance between 1,000 and 10,000 times longer than that. Imagine the complexity of a process like this. What's even more impressive is that despite this great distance, the stem cells manage to find the wound and repair the damage effectively. They interpret weak signals emanating from the wound and still manage to locate the exact spot where they are needed. This level of efficiency in Plenarians has left scientists in awe. After extensive research, many scientists scientists became so confident in the regenerative ability of these creatures that they concluded that, apparently, the only way to kill a Plenarian would be through extreme methods, such as infecting it with a serious disease or completely destroying it by incineration. Some scholars have even claimed that if a Plenarian were left in a controlled environment without being affected by external factors, it could live indefinitely. This leads us to reflect on the incredible regenerative capacities that some living beings possess, challenging our own notions of the limits of life and death. The Plenarian, with its almost unlimited regenerative ability, truly puts into perspective what it means to be immortal in nature. If you can imagine, it is a true example of biological resilience. Number 12. The Immortal Jellyfish. Here's another creature that has defied logic and science to reveal something extraordinary, a type of immortality. The immortal jellyfish, as it is known, possesses a unique ability that makes it fascinating, and that's why it earned its name. Its ability to live is so impressive that scientists have been studying it for years, trying to understand the phenomenon. The first reason it is considered immortal is that the only way to kill it is through total physical destruction. This means that it would need to be eaten by a predator or reach a stage where regeneration becomes impossible. But the most fascinating part comes next. If the jellyfish is not completely destroyed, or if it suffers only superficial injuries, or even if it senses that it's about to die due to conditions like hunger, it begins to act in a surprising way. At this critical moment, it starts to reverse its life cycle in a totally unique manner. By reversing its biological clock, it returns to an immature state, essentially going back to the beginning of its existence. It's not like humans, who sometimes act immaturely out of whim or stress. The jellyfish literally returns to an earlier stage of its life and relives that period, with all the experiences it gained, but now in a younger body. Imagine this: you reach old age, with all the knowledge accumulated over the years, but instead of approaching death, you go back to being a teenager, with the energy and vitality of youth, but keeping all the wisdom you acquired. This is exactly what this species of jellyfish does repeatedly throughout its life. It is not only capable of stopping aging, but it can reverse its life process whenever needed, ensuring a continuous chance for a reboot. Although no one fully understands how it does this, or what in its biology allowed it to evolve into this state, the fact is that scientists are conducting intense research on this creature. They believe that understanding the biology of this jellyfish could reveal important secrets about aging and possibly even immortality itself. After all, without any external force destroying it, there is no reason to believe it couldn't live forever, traversing the ages while reinventing itself. This process, if fully understood, could have profound implications for medical science and even human longevity. Number 11. Tardigrades. Now that I've introduced you to animals of all sizes that can come back to life or survive imminent death, let's focus on a microscopic creature with remarkable resistance to extreme conditions. We're talking about tardigrades, also known as water bears. These tiny beings are true champions of survival and are widely recognized among biologists for their ability to withstand almost anything nature can throw at them. From extreme dehydration, exposure to the vacuum of space, to even being sent to the moon, tardigrades continue to live, defying the laws of biology as we know them. Although minuscule, barely visible to the naked eye, tardigrades are complex creatures made up of about 1,000 cells, showing the same intricacy and resilience as larger insects like cockroaches or even fruit flies. And we all know how cockroaches survive in the most desperate situations. Tardigrades are so extraordinary that they can survive in different physical states without showing any signs of wear. They are particularly fascinating for their ability to survive extreme dehydration. Even when completely dehydrated, they remain alive, something that defies traditional biological logic. Scientists have conducted experiments with tardigrades sent to the moon, and believe it or not, they survive. Furthermore, tardigrades can be frozen to temperatures close to absolute zero without any adverse effects, and they can still live on. They can also endure extremely high temperatures, withstanding boiling water without failing or showing any signs of pain. But what really impresses is their resistance to radiation. They can withstand thousands of times more radiation than humans without suffering damage. And as if that weren't enough, they can even survive the vacuum of space. When exposed to the vacuum, tardigrades enter an inactive state, meaning they become dehydrated, essentially turning into dry husks, but they are far from dead. They are experts at surviving in the absence of water, capable of remaining in a suspended animation state for years until conditions become favorable again. Number 10. Lungfish. There are many animals in the world today that are known as living fossils, creatures that have withstood everything from prehistoric times and continue to exist in our era. These beings are not just examples of survival, but also testaments to extreme resilience, capable of overcoming the catastrophes and mass extinction events that have occurred throughout Earth's history. The lungfish is one of these remarkable animals, surviving through different geological eras and continuing to exist to this day, despite its long and challenging evolutionary journey. Its primary survival skill is estivating, which is a variation of hibernation but adapted for extreme drought conditions. During periods when the water it lives in evaporates or becomes scarce, the lungfish buries itself in the bottom of drying bodies of water and begins to produce a special mucus cocoon. This cocoon protects the fish from dehydration and harsh weather conditions. While estivating, the lungfish enters a state of dormancy, in which its metabolic activity is drastically reduced. This allows it to survive for long periods without food or oxygen, as it can turn off almost all essential functions for survival, except the most basic ones. Furthermore, during this dormancy period, the lungfish does not feed on external sources, but instead consumes its own muscle tissues to extract the necessary nutrients to stay alive. Although this process is not ideal, it is sufficient to ensure its survival until the conditions improve and it can emerge from its cocoon and resume its normal activity. This ability is impressive because it allows the lungfish to survive extreme drought conditions for several months or even years, depending on the severity of the environment. With a history dating back about 400 million years, the lungfish is one of the most impressive examples of resistance to extinction, being one of the few species that not only survived natural cataclysms over time, but also adapted in an extraordinary way to overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges. As such, the lungfish continues to be one of the greatest examples of the remarkable capacity for adaptation of life on Earth. It not only survives, but often resurges after periods of severe adversity. Death, for it, is a matter of patience and time, not immediate necessity. Number 9. Flies. Now I'm going to talk about one of the most annoying creatures on the planet. Seriously, these things are incredibly irritating, but I don't need to tell you that, since you've had to deal with them for years. Now here's the twist. Flies are physically easy to kill, especially if you have a fly swatter or a slipper, but they actually have a short lifespan. Still, they're surprisingly resilient in nature. Given the right conditions, flies can survive freezing temperatures by entering a state of suspended animation. You can freeze them for days without any warmth, and they'll just snap back to life once it returns. Even more bizarre, female flies can live for several days after being decapitated. After losing their heads, these females adopt an upright posture, much like a normal fly, and are still capable of performing complex behaviors such as training and even flying. It's weird, and now I hate them even more. Number 8. Praying mantis. This one's pretty wild, so just bear with me. The praying mantis is one of several species in the world known for a peculiar form of cannibalism. In this case, they eat their partners after finishing with them, if you know what I mean. It's seriously creepy, and you'd swear the males are absolutely dead, and they are. However, their remains stay alive in a different kind of way. Scientists have discovered that when females consume the males after that special moment, the male's remains aren't immediately digested by the female's body. Instead, they are used to help ensure that more eggs are laid by the female. So, while the male is gone, his contribution to the cause lives on in the next generation in multiple ways. Number 7. Fruit flies. Don't confuse them with the flies I mentioned earlier. Fruit flies are another example of an annoying insect that manages to live far longer than it should under lethal conditions. First off, just trying to swat them is a challenge, because their vision allows them to see you coming, and then you have to deal with the fact that they're airborne and can literally change direction instantly to avoid you. Like other flies, they can survive being frozen and even being microwaved. But that's not all. As one episode of Mythbusters proved, fruit flies are actually more capable of surviving nuclear radiation than cockroaches, further proving how they just refuse to die. So, if you end up with an infestation in your home, well, good luck with that. Number 6. Squids. This one might surprise you because of the phrase, a fish out of water. Since squids are aquatic creatures, you'd think they'd die instantly without water. However, that's not true. In fact, certain species of squid will voluntarily leave the water and can survive for up to 30 minutes without breathing. Of course, the catch is that they need to return to the water before they dry out completely, and some don't make it, which shows why this move is risky from the start. Honestly, I don't really understand why they're on this list. Number 5. The Hydra. The microscopic organisms known as hydras are very small, about 30 millimeters long when stretched out, but they have a way of not just surviving, but actually thriving, especially the green hydra, which is a creature that contains algae within its body. When dehydrated and therefore deprived of oxygen, it can continue living because the algae inside it provide all the oxygen it needs. I guess it doesn't mind needing a little help to stay alive. Number 4. Humans? Surprised? Well, we're animals too, you know, and humanity can actually teach animals a thing or two when it comes to dramatic survival stories. There are people who push the human body to insane limits and avoid death as a result, like Wim Hof, who used meditation, focus, and controlled breathing to survive both extreme heat and freezing temperatures. Also, you've probably all heard stories of people who were declared dead and then came back to life shortly after. It's creepy, but it happens. Yes, humans are fragile creatures and we break down all the time, but deep within us is the ability to survive incredible things when the right situation arises. And just to be clear, I don't want you to go out and try anything life-threatening, but know that humanity has survived a lot, and it will keep surviving even more in the future. Number 3. The wolf eel. The wolf eel is one of many creatures in the world today that are struggling to survive, mostly due to human activity and fierce predators that continue to reduce their population. Whether it's from natural causes or getting caught in fishing nets, these factors have seriously impacted their numbers. So, how haven't they gone completely extinct? Well, part of it is thanks to conservation efforts, for which we should all be grateful. Another factor is that they lay a lot of eggs. A single female wolf eel can produce up to 10,000 eggs in a single mating season. Just one wolf eel does that on her own. Of course, many of those eggs end up being eaten by predators, but having even 1, 2, or maybe 10 survive is enough to rebuild an entire population. If luck is on their side, the wolf eel population is stable for now, and hopefully it stays that way in the future. Number 2. Lobsters. Now, this one might make you hungry, and for that I apologize. Well, sort of. You may have heard the rumor that lobsters are immortal. According to the best scientific knowledge, that's not actually true. However, they are one of the select groups of animals in the world that can grow larger than most others if left undisturbed. Lobsters have a special trait. Through molting, they shed parts of their exoskeleton and grow a new one, because they just keep growing. The molting process never stops until they die. That means they keep growing and growing and growing until the end of their lives, which led some people to believe they were immortal. Because if they can grow forever, they must live forever, right? Well, not quite. Still, they can live up to 100 years, and it's kind of hard to tell whether that's truly their upper limit or just the best we've been able to measure so far. Number 1. Bees. First up is a public service announcement for all of you. Bees are vital to the biological survival of our world, but they can still be pretty annoying. And yes, they can sting you and all that. In fact, they can even do all that after they're dead. You might remember that certain species of bees die after stinging you. Not all of them do, but many do. And you might come across a dead bee and think it's safe to pick it up, since clearly it can't hurt you. But in reality, the stinging action isn't controlled by the bee's brain. It's triggered by involuntary reflexes, so if you pick up a dead bee that still has its stinger, you could still get stung. The smartest thing to do is just don't touch it. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you liked our content, please subscribe to our channel and leave a like. Also, check out other interesting content that is appearing on your screen right now, and I'll see you in the next video. Until next time.